Washoe County DEA with a victim of crime. And I'll let them introduce themselves, but here y'all go. They're going to tell their story about what Washoe County justice looks like.
Hi, I'm Paul White with Education Crusade. This is my friend Tim McGivney, and we're here to talk about the fact we're here outside the DA's office in Washoe County. And outside their office, they say they stand for truth and justice. Tim had a recent example where he got neither one. Tim was working, what was the job you were doing, Tim?
Yeah, so I was hired to clear squatters have overrun a lot of the rural areas in Washoe County, and I was hired by a private property owner out there to clear his property. He had about 20 to 25 vehicles on his property, multiple squatters camps.
Perfect, and you were able to clear them all off with the exception of one guy who didn't want to go, and over a short period, how did he resist the fact that he was a squatter in violation of the law and needed to leave? What did he do exactly?
Yeah, so everybody else, it took a little bit, but we got them cleared. This one guy was the main problem guy. So working with RPD, them coming out multiple times, he wouldn't leave, so he just refused to go. So he stayed right on his property, and RPD was working on a plan to remove him.
Now his first thing, so he had some big dogs. What did he do with the dogs?
Oh yeah, first encounter was I went up to his camp and he let the dogs out after me. They were jumping. Luckily I was driving up and they came out and were jumping all over and attacking my truck.
Yeah, big dogs, big enough to do damage. After that, later on, he was approaching your truck and was still mad, besides the fact that had he threatened to kill you more than once?
Yeah, that's part of it. So I told him that it's private property, he needs to go. He seemed to agree, but then when I went up the road, he comes charging up in his vehicle, comes right to the front of my vehicle, and threatens to kill me if I ever come back on his property.
And then a little further on, Tim, then what did he do? He came up and was making motions again like he was going to kill you, and then what did he do with lewd nature?
Yeah, so that first time he threatened to kill me, I contact RPD, they come out, and again, they set up a plan to get this guy. They said they were going to arrest him away from his trailer so it goes smoother. Anyhow, he ends up seeing me on another day when I was staying away from his property. He sees me and comes walking up toward my truck, threatening to kill me like this, pulling his pants down, exposing himself to me, flipping me off, and just coming at my vehicle, walking. So I back my vehicle up, call 911.
So he sicks the dogs on him one day, then he's exposed himself a couple times, right? Mm-hmm. Very extremely lewdly. Comes up with an old, Tim had a smaller truck, he had a big Suburban. Came up, what was he doing with the Suburban, Tim?
Yeah, so then once he gets in his truck, as I back up the hill, he comes toward the truck with his and chases up to me. I'm on with 911 telling them what was going on earlier, and I tell them they need to get there. I decide to attempt to avoid him, but he's on the main road, so I go and take a loop to go away from him. He comes up and smashes the back of my truck multiple times. Then when we come back out on the main road and there's a steep ravine on the side, he crashes across the front of my truck. And
so he could have knocked you
intending, I think, to push me into the ravine.
Sure, and it could have flipped the truck,
Oh, yeah.
could have been potentially a fatality. And the damage to your truck was how much?
Ended up being just under 20,000, 19,000 something.
So Tim filed his report with the Reno Police Department, and which included...
They came and arrested him that day.
They arrested him that day, and so he would have had 4 potential felonies, sicking the dogs on him, 2 repeated gross indecent exposure, 3 $20,000 worth of damage to his vehicle, and 4 assault with a deadly weapon, trying to knock him into a ravine. Yeah. So he sat in jail for a while. When it finally came to court, Tim, District Attorney's office here. District Attorney is Chris Hicks for Washoe County, an elected position. So what did the District Attorney do? Did she say she was going to charge? You expected her to file for the 4 felonies, did she?
At first, the 4 felonies were on RPD type case. They had all the pictures. They took all the pictures, got my statement. He went to jail, stayed in jail, no bail, because it was such obvious evidence that they had against him. for the acts that he committed against me and smashing my vehicle. Get to the point where, yeah, it's going to be going to court. DA has everything they need. It sounds like it's going to be an open and shut case. And then all of a sudden things change.
Yeah, so all of a sudden Tim thought he would be going to a felony level court to prosecute the guy for these 4 felonies he committed. But it didn't turn out that way. All of a sudden it ends up in misdemeanor court. And Tim finds out that, was your attorney going to call the main witness a police officer? Did they agree to do that?
That's where it got fuzzy, and I didn't understand it. All of a sudden, they weren't going to call the sergeant who was head of that whole case with RPD, who knew everything and was in control of that investigation they were doing on him prior to this, and then arresting him that day. They weren't going to call him and bring him to testify, and they threw out a bunch of the evidence.
Right, so in other words, in the DA's office decided, no, we're not going to call a key witness. No, we're not going to use key evidence. And next thing you know, in misdemeanor court, and they offered this guy who had committed the 4 felonies, what deal did your attorney offer him if he wanted to plead? What was
They ended up, so I said, what's going on? We need to call that witness, the sergeant. They said, no, they're not going to. That's just the way it is. Ultimately, it's her decision, Rachel said. And she said that they were going to offer him a plea deal of criminal trespassing. And I said, that's pretty much nothing. And she said, well, at least it's a conviction. I said, I don't care. Let's go to trial with all the evidence here.
Right.
That would be something. This is nothing.
And depending what you know about DAs, what matters to them is not justice, is not the truth. What matters, at least to bad ones, is a conviction rate, so that they can say, oh, we've got almost 100% conviction rate or whatever. So yeah, they did get a conviction on the guy. He pled to the public trespass. They got a conviction by throwing out 4 felonies, including a life-threatening thing. The
lewdness that I said, well, what about the lewdness? Why don't you charge him with that? She said, oh, he doesn't want to have to register as a sex offender.
Yeah, he didn't think he wanted to do that, so DA said, well, that's okay, we just won't charge for that. Now, so how it finishes is, Tim walks out of court, and the justice he got, well, the truth was, nothing relevant to getting the guilt his attorney was willing to bring up in court. The justice walks out, he gets a misdemeanor, like the equivalent of a jaywalking ticket on this guy. And then, so we came down right here behind the office and behind me to meet with the people involved in Tim's case. And they said that the reasons they gave for doing what they did is they said, what did they say how the judge felt about your case, Tim?
Oh yeah, they said that the judge just didn't like the case.
Yeah,
they don't know why she was being so mean and didn't want them.
Yeah, the judge, and we're referring to Judge Steinheimer, said, oh, she just didn't like the case. And then they said, what'd they say? The witness and the evidence didn't get brought up because how would the judge have felt?
She wouldn't have. They just made it seem like she wouldn't have been interested or
She
didn't care.
wouldn't have been interested, and so they felt like they got a victory by taking this misdemeanor parking ticket for 4 felonies. Well, so we didn't want to leave it there, Tim, so because it was your case, you decided best if he stayed out of it. So I went and met with Judge Steinheimer. And to make a long story short, I told her, I said, the DA's office said you didn't like the case. They didn't know why. They didn't want to push it because they thought you'd give them a hard time on future cases. They said you were the one who didn't want evidence brought forward, or the evidence or the witness brought in, and
that she didn't like the case.
And she didn't like the case. And Judge Steinheimer said to me, every last one of those things is not true. I don't have the power to do that if I wanted to. So what we got is, was there any truth? No. Tim's attorney did not bring all of it up. There was, the dishonesty was ridiculous. The justice did not happen. We contacted Chris Hicks and said, surely we can talk to you about this. This isn't standard operating procedure, we hope, for your office. To this day, this morning, we've heard nothing whatsoever from this office. Nothing. It was like shoulder shrug, oh well. And What advice would you give people, Tim, if they're in a situation where they're having to deal with our DA?
Oh man, I don't know what advice to give. It's just gonna be hassle and not gonna get justice if you're on the wrong end of, I guess it depends on your living situation.
Right.
But, you know, as far as somebody who's housed trying to get justice, it doesn't look very good.
No, so our feeling with this is that District Attorney Chris Hicks offers, not just Tim personally, but the community, an explanation for this. And everybody screws up. We would have been fine if he contacted Tim and said, you know, we blew it on this one. We're really apologetic, but we're not going to let any more get by. No, they got a conviction rate on it, again, a parking ticket equivalent. They're very happy with it, so let's see what happens. DA's office gets their conviction rate. Chris Hicks avoids bad publicity for his next election. The perpetrator got to walk away out of the state with no punishment, and the only one left holding the bag with having his life threatened repeatedly and $20,000 damage to his truck was the victim. Anything else you want to share, Tim?
No, I don't think so. You covered it.
Okay. This is
Okay, everybody, I appreciate you watching. Hit the like button, follow, and do all that good stuff. Keep the thing going. Let's expose the government, and hopefully we can get justice for everybody eventually. And everybody will be subject to the same rules and the same laws without regard to who they are in our communities. Thanks much. Have a good day.